Hey there and welcome to my channel. This is Foggy Fiction and I am Haley. I'm a writer living with mental illness, doing my best to show that mental health does not dictate talent or worth, and hoping to encourage others to chase their dreams. If you're new to my channel, I post 1 to 2 videos per week, usually centered around things related to writing, reading, and mental health, but sometimes I veer off topic and that's okay too. In today's video, I'm telling you all the things that I used to think were true about writing back when I was a young writer in high school who had no clue what she was doing. Yeah, let's get to it. Number 1. Said is dead. I can't remember if this is one I came to on my own or if it's something I saw somewhere, but I was definitely under the impression that it was a bad idea to only use the word said in dialogue tags. I even recently found some very old pins on one of my writing Pinterest boards that listed other ways of saying it. And if we were to go back and look at some of my earlier writing, especially that from my teenage years and younger, you'd be likely to find a lot of they wondered, she chuckled, he retorted, they questioned, he spat, she sighed, they yelled, she breathed, and so on. And some of those aren't even correct to use anyway because, they're actions and not dialogue tags, but that's a whole different topic. If you're watching this and you're thinking, oh crap, I do this, I feel like all of us have been there at one point, so you're not alone. But let me tell you, said is not dead. Said is not dead. It is the invisible word. Your eyes just brush over it when you're reading, and we love it. Number 2, you can never describe too much. I'm almost certain this is definitely one that I did come up with on my own, and I have no clue how I got this in my head, but I genuinely believe that there was no detail that was unimportant, that you really needed to describe everything in order for your reader to properly see that picture in their head that you have in yours. And again, I don't know where I got this from. I mean, I was reading constantly when I grew up. I was on the school bus for an hour, sometimes longer, and I read the entire time. I read during class when I was in school. I was constantly reading. I have no excuse. It's not like I was unaware of what the writing inside of actual books looked like. I truly have no clue where I got this from. But if you look at some of my earlier attempts at writing books, you'll see a lot of breaks to describe characters and their outfits, all the way down to the glitter in their skirt. And every little unimportant detail of their surroundings. Places you will not even ever see again. It was incredibly boring, and even I skipped those parts when I would reread it. And yet I still somehow thought that it belonged. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that all descriptions are bad, but they're not all necessary. And for some reason, even as a reader, I didn't know that. Number 3. This is one that is less something I thought was true and more something I didn't realize was a no-no. You can totally start out your book with someone waking up. In fact, most of my stories started out with someone waking up. Now, this isn't true of my short stories. I was actually fairly good at writing those even when I was younger, but I'm not gonna lie to you. This is something I didn't learn was bad until a few years ago when I started watching AuthorTube and reading craft books. I think it was Save the Cat specifically that opened my eyes to this one. In fact, MH, which is the first project I ever completed a full draft on, that I completed in June of last year and I'm still revising, actually used to start out with my character waking up in the hospital. No worries, that is no longer how the story starts out. Now, I feel like there are probably times when an opening like this might be okay, but it is overdone and cliche to the point that, to my understanding, it's basically an instant pass for literary agents. Which means that even if you think your story is the exception, you're almost definitely wrong. Of course, if you're self-publishing, or someone who is already a very successful author, you can probably get away with this one. Or not, I don't know. I just know that I've yet to read an article or a video talking about this where they didn't say don't do it. Number 4, and this one makes me cringe laugh. You can absolutely query before you finished your book. Yes, I absolutely thought this was true when I was a teenage writer. My reasoning? Well, it's obviously going to take them a long time to get to my query letter, and they'll only want to read the first few chapters to start anyway, so by the time they're ready for my full book, I'll be done writing it. Did I mention this one makes me cringe? Allow me to point out the biggest glaring mistake that I had with that. Teenage Haley apparently thought she was good enough to query without editing. And let me tell you, Teenage Haley was wrong. I didn't even finish writing a first draft on a book until I was in my late 20s, and I'm still revising that same book. Teenage Haley was critically and adorably wrong. And for anyone who doesn't already know this, you are not ready to query until you can't revise your book anymore on your own, until you're at a point where you'd be comfortable throwing that baby on a shelf and letting people buy it. Because, yeah, you're almost definitely going to have more work to do when you get a literary agent and they get you an editor, but the literary agents you query are going to take into account the amount of work your story needs when they consider taking you on as a client. There's a reason that revise and resubmit is a thing. Disclaimer, basically disclaimer for this entire video. I'm not a literary agent, an editor, a publisher, or someone who has even been published or queried yet. I'm just someone who has taken in a lot of information from literary agents, editors, and authors, both published and querying. And I mean a lot of information. And number 5, writing is easy. In fact, I genuinely thought that the entire process from start to finish wasn't that hard. Just write the book, edit it as you go, finish with a complete ready manuscript, send it off to a publisher, and boom, you're a published author making big money 2 months later. Yes, we're talking about teenage Haley again. And yes, yet again, she was very wrong. And also, I want to point out one more time that my teenage self was a talented poet and had a way with short stories, but was synonymous with garbage when it came to writing an actual book. Writing that first book and everything that comes after leading up to getting it on the shelf is not easy. Sure, it is sometimes easier for some authors than others, and often that is due in big part to timing and luck. But for most writers, the reality is that your book will not even be traditionally published. Now, I'm not saying that your book won't be published at all, because self-pub is a thing, but to my understanding, that isn't necessarily an easy process either. Whichever avenue you choose, there's a long list of steps to get to that end point. You can't just write the book. You write it, yeah, but then you still have to edit it yourself, send it out to beta readers, edit it again, probably do those things a few more times before even querying a literary agent. You'll likely get several rejections before and if you get picked up, and if you do get an agent, you're still not ready to be published. You're going to have professional editors look at your manuscript, likely more than one, because there are different kinds of editors who focus on different things. And then by the time you get through all of that, you still have to hope your agent can find a publisher who wants to publish your freshly polished book. And I'm pretty sure that still doesn't necessarily mean that you're done editing, as the publisher might request changes before they commit. And even then, I haven't even mentioned all the time that goes into cover art and back cover copy and marketing, and it's just not easy. And honestly, I'm listing all that based solely on the knowledge I've gained from craft books and YouTube, so who knows if I'm leaving anything out. I probably am. And even if you're going the self-publishing route, a lot of that still applies. And that's not even mentioning the statistics about people who actually get picked up by literary agents. Bottom line, it isn't easy. I guess it's a good thing I'm not teenage Haley anymore. Anyway, that is my list. Let me know down in the comments if you used to believe any of these things, or better yet, if you think I'm wrong. Because I am just going off of information that I have gotten from reading craft books, watching YouTube, and what I've learned as I've developed my own skill. I could be wrong. You tell me. Like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're interested in following my very clumsy journey as a writer living with mental illness, and enjoy the happy moments.